Hi, welcome to the All Things LGBTQ interview show, where we interview LGBTQ guests who are making important contributions to our communities.
All Things LGBTQ is taped at Orca Media in Montpelier, Vermont, which we recognize as being unceded Indigenous land.
Thanks for joining us and enjoy the show.
Like 70,000 other people, I was at the most recent All No Kings rally on our State House lawn. And one of the speakers got my attention because they were talking about doing work that's important to our communities and a particular project that creates or hopefully will create a safe haven for people within our community. So please welcome for a first-time visit to All Things LGBTQ, Geri Peterson. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
So let's start just briefly about your connection with Vermont, how you became involved as an activist in politics, and then we'll talk more specifically about, so exactly who or what is 5051?
Sure. Um, so, um, I'm a trans woman. I'm 46 years old. Um, and last year, um, I read Project 2025, and it was pretty clear to me, like, exactly what would happen. And the threat that it posed not only to all Americans, but to trans people specifically. And when Trump on the election trail said that the first thing that he would do in office was to, target trans people, I took that seriously. And so last year, I spent some time campaigning for Kamala down in Philadelphia and Atlanta. Um, Things didn't quite work out the way that I wanted them to. But when things came back around, and I came back home to Vermont, I decided to continue the fight. And in February, um, someone on the internet had this grand idea to have everyone show up in their state capitals at the same time on this particular day. 50 states, 50 protests, one day. That was the genesis of 5051, was some guy's post on Reddit. And I was one of those that showed up that day. And it was a powerful moment. We all got up and shared, like, it was a moment of catharsis. Like, what are we all going to do about this? And looking around and seeing each other and realizing that nobody had really coordinated or organized what was happening, we took it upon ourselves to take the next step. And we organized the next protest and the next one. And we kept on doing that throughout this year. I think the last No Kings rally was the seventh one that I've spoken at personally and organized. Um, and I'm just going to keep on doing that until we win.
So you said coming home to Vermont. So what is your connection to Vermont?
Yeah, so I'm not a native to New England. I actually was born on the West Coast. I came to New England for school, um, and I moved up here from the Boston area about 5 years ago during COVID. I was one of those who was looking for a place of safety. I bought a vacation home and just decided that there was no point in leaving. Um,
And thank you for deciding that Vermont felt like a safe place to become your home. And sort of going back a little bit, one comment on Reddit created a nationwide response. So there was definitely something there that people we're ready to tap into. Has 5051 now become truly a nationwide organization or a nationwide movement?
Yeah, it is a movement, like previous movements, like Black Lives Matter, like Occupy Wall Street, in that it's decentralized. There isn't any specific like leadership or anything like that. That being said, everyone who's active within the movement knows each other and communicates with each other and coordinates with each other. Um, and works with other more structured organizations like Indivisible um, to organize some of the events that are happening at a wider scale, like No Kings.
So when there's events that are happening here in Vermont, I can anticipate that there are similar events that are happening across the country. It's not just our choosing to stand up on a particular day, that there's really an impact for what it is that we're doing collectively.
Yeah. So the goal in general for what we're trying to accomplish with these protests is to activate the 3.5% of the population that's referenced in Chenoweth, a Harvard researcher um, who has done a lot of work in investigating like where and how populist movements can actually affect social change. And like that's a magical number, kind of. And what it references is that that's a way that it's an indicator that there's a certain amount of the population at that point which is caring enough to show up to these things that maybe they're going to do other things that are going to engage with their politicians and other organizations, businesses, etc., to make the kind of changes that we need to have in this country to get our democracy back.
So the expectation is that the rallies are then going to create a ripple effect that brings about true change. But you have a position within 5051 that may put you in a more active role in ensuring that that gets carried out.
Yeah, I have taken upon myself to maybe take a wider leadership role within the state to make sure that people are connecting up with each other and that they have access to resources um, that they might otherwise not feel like they have access to. Empowering people and connecting people up is really what the movement is all about.
And you have a website, Facebook page. There's a means by which I could routinely connect with you to find out what's being organized, where it's being held, and sort of the expectation of what's going to happen.
Yes, you can go to 50501vermont.com and you'll have all a list of the events that are going on across the state, and you can sign up for a mailing list and everything like that.
Now,
And
is that merely a website or is that also a Facebook?
it's also on Facebook and all the
Okay.
other socials as well.
Okay. You're everywhere as we should be. So so during the interview already, you've made reference to Project 2025, and thank you to the persons who have read the 900 pages and can give us the summaries. What was it that you saw in Project 2025 that we shouldn't forget, that we should have been paying attention to? Because everyone kept trying to say, oh, this is just campaign rhetoric, it's going to go away. But from what you said, I think you and I both sort of looked at it and said, what makes you think he won't do this? So could
Well,
you,
Project 2025 is an attempt to um, enact a fascist regime within the United States by legal means. And it's trying to accomplish this by means of enacting a playbook which isn't terribly dissimilar to Nazi Germany. And in that respect, in Nazi Germany, before they came for the Jews, they came very first ones were for transgender people. And honestly, it almost reads like it was written by somebody who was just cribbing that entire playbook and just saying, okay, let's just do it the same way the Nazis did it. Um, and well, what made the difference for me, what made me actually come out of the closet, and be as visible as I could be as a transgendered woman, was the last straw, um, wherein, it's painting transgendered people as sexual deviants, and you know and also saying that, as such, that they should not be allowed to, they should be like on sex offender registries. And the
And
idea as a mother of, like, being in a situation where I'm not allowed to be with my own children, I mean, it tore my heart apart. I mean, for me and for all mothers, right? I just can't. But, that's the kind of thing that gives me strength, right? Um, because I can't let that happen to some family out there. I can't let families get torn apart just because of this hate.
and it sounds like you're taking that hate, and rather than allowing it to immobilize you, you're using it as the impetus to say, I'm I'm going to stand my ground. You are not going to erase me. You are not going to tell people that I'm a terrorist and somebody I'm not. I'm going to be true to myself. But you've gone even further, and you are personally working on a project specifically to embrace people from within the transgender community. So could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure. So it took a while, as things do, but this past September, I finished buying a property here in Montpelier, which I'm using as a space to provide temporary housing for transient people who are fleeing less safe areas of the country, who come here to Vermont, seeking the safety that they can find here, and giving them a space to, find jobs and find, permanent housing, and become established. We have 5 trans women, including myself, living here now. Um, 2 more coming in the next couple of weeks. And we continue to have like a pipeline of people who are coming here. And it's I'm on several channels of people who, eh, throughout the country, trans people, I mean, they've always had a hard time, but um, the past few months, it's been horrific. The level of violence and rhetoric that we've had to face, um, particularly like in southern states, it's people are terrified, and I'm just doing whatever I can to help them.
And thank you for that. And to say, echo what it is that you just said, it seems as though everything that the current federal regime is doing to try and discount, eliminate, erase our communities, when we push back, or in the instance where, Vermont's Attorney General is filing suit to stop actions, they try to find another way around it. So is you are trying to create this here in Vermont, and I'm taking it that your effort is being replicated in other states that may have some of the similar non-discrimination and protections that Vermont does?
Yes, there are other states with similar protections. New York City is one of those that's particularly good in terms of the protections it offers. It is kind of more expensive to live there, but it's a popular choice. Um, I think that one of the appeals of Vermont to a lot of trans folk is the proximity to the Canadian border, because well. Um,
In a worst case scenario, I can take my overnight bag and visit my cousin in Montreal and just say, I'm not leaving.
yeah.
Okay, 7 Days did a article recently saying that Vermont providers are anticipating an influx from New Hampshire of our youth who are either looking for or trying to continue their gender affirmation treatments. Are you getting inquiries from families saying, we need a safe place, I need to protect my child?
I have received a couple of inquiries in that nature, yes.
Okay,
Uh, my particular space isn't well set up for that right now, but well, this is just the first step. We are looking to expand our housing availability, and there are people in the community who have stepped up to provide additional housing besides that, which I've started here.
so how do we support you in this? Because, as we talked briefly before we started the interview, I didn't want to make you more of a target than you already are, but you said that you've kind of crossed the line already. But how do we support you and what it is that you're trying to create and the support you're trying to give?
Yeah, so we have a website for the house, forwalavand.org. And you'll find links there to sign up for our mailing list so that you'll get updates about the efforts that we're making here. You'll also find some links to donate if you are into that sort of thing. Um, we also welcome gifts of other kinds like food. We are renovation efforts underway as well. So um, if you're on the mailing list, you might see calls for doing kind of like labor parties where you might come in and do some help, some cleanup after some renovation work or something like that.
I may not be great with a hammer, but I've been known to be pretty good sweeping with a broom. So, we'll see what. So, as you look at moving forward, what do you see as being our greatest strength to continue to move forward or to at least stand where we are?
Yeah. So the trans community is under threat. So it's easy for us to acknowledge and recognize the need to connect and support each other. But the truth is that all of us are under threat and that we're all under the same, existential threat. Fascism doesn't it doesn't leave no one safe. There isn't any safety anywhere. And that if we all want to survive this, we all need to acknowledge that and support one another. And that's the message that I have for the world.
And we need to ensure that we're making room for each other, we're supporting each other, and we're supporting each other's voices so that we all get heard. And along that line, might there be another No Kings rally coming up in the near future?
We haven't scheduled one yet, but it's inevitable.
All right. Well, I will be waiting for it. I know that, it's probably going to happen in the middle of a Vermont winter, so we'll tell everyone to dress warmly and to come out and be counted. So with that, thank you for the work you're doing. And I hope that you get the support that that work truly deserves.
Thank you.
Anyone who watches all things LGBTQ news format program knows that I frequently report on all of the work and the challenges that are confronting the state of Maine. So we've invited back one of our favorite Mainers to talk about all the mischief that they're creating. Please welcome back Speaker of the House of Representatives, Ryan Fecteau. Welcome.
Thank you, Keith. Great to be back.
It's great to have you back. And as I alluded to, from the beginning of this current federal regime, Maine has been in the crosshairs as they define it. So I just wanted to check in, seeing how you all were doing.
We're
And
doing as well as we can. I think we're all, as most of the nation is, very concerned about SNAP benefits, which are set to end on November 1st, even though the Trump administration and the USDA have a contingency fund that was authorized by Congress that can be used to backfill funds during a situation like a government shutdown. And so, we've made some really good progress here in Maine and have tackled some big issues, but we're definitely concerned about the lingering impacts of the Trump administration's policies on the most vulnerable Mainers.
I was going to say, during his first administration, there was a shutdown, and he used those funds to fund SNAP. But all of a sudden, it's like, no, I've decided to do something different. Looking at some of the bills that have been introduced into your legislature, you introduced one about trying to preserve the integrity of SNAP benefits, correct?
Yeah, so I put forward a bill this year that will try to prevent some of or try to address some of the issues with cutting food assistance for families here in Maine. This is before the shutdown conversation in the big beautiful bill, or the big bad bill, whatever you want to call it. There was a provision in there that will basically withhold federal funding from states across the country for food assistance at varying levels. Maine will get hit with roughly $50 million in loss funds for food assistance, and my bill is going to try to tackle that issue and hopefully mitigate the impacts that that initial annual withholding would have on Maine families.
I was going to say, and going back to a bit of your personal bio, you shared that you grew up single mom, worked in healthcare, so you lived in subsidized housing, and you received SNAP benefits. So you're one of those legislators who has personal life experience, and you haven't forgotten it. You're looking at, how can I now, with this position of power and privilege, ensure that someone else doesn't have to go through what I experienced. So thank you for that.
Yeah, and I especially think about the kids, because kids sense anxiety in their parents, and I know parents try to do their best to uh, put on a good face and give assurances to their kids, but I remember being that kid who, even with SNAP benefits, still, you know, those weren't enough, honestly, to put food on the table. And so, that's a feeling that is so visceral for me. I know it, and I feel for the kids who are going to be impacted by this. In Maine, we have one in 1 in 3 kids, I think, are food insecure. This is really going to impact them in a huge way.
And it's one of those that once you've experienced it, you're not going to forget it. and it's going to be persistent. So, but one of the other sort of life experiences that is coming into the forefront during the upcoming election, which will happen before this is aired. You had introduced a bill in previous session that extended voting rights to
Mhm.
make it easier for elders and people with disabilities. Question one for the ballot item looks like it is someone's effort to take the attempt at an executive order to make more voting restrictions and actually discourage voters from being able to access services. Do you want to talk a bit about question one and how it came about and your expectation of how the vote may go on Tuesday?
Yeah, well, I hope when this airs, this is yesterday's news, and the bill in that referendum has been defeated. I'm a strong proponent of no on one, and the reason being is its impact on absentee voting in particular. It's been pitched as a voter ID initiative, but it's actually got like 24 various changes to current election law, most of which have to do with absentee voting and have nothing to do with voter ID. And it also repeals a law that, as you mentioned, that I passed a few years ago, that makes it so that older adults and persons with disabilities can receive an ongoing absentee ballot status, so that the clerk's office in their town will send them a ballot automatically for each election. This was actually piloted in the city that I represent before it became a permanent a fixture of absentee voting across the state, and with huge success. So, when the pilot ended, we had a lot of voters in my community who were calling the clerk's office wondering why they stopped sending the ballot automatically, and she had to inform them that the pilot had ended. So we made it permanent, extended it statewide, and it's something that has increased access to voting for people in our communities. And absentee voting, 40% of Mainers in the last election voted absentee. This is something that voters embrace. It really is embraced by people on both sides of the aisle. It's not a partisan. It has never been a partisan issue, so it's insane to think that um, amidst their efforts to weaken access to the ballot, they're undermining one of the things that Mainers love the most about the voting laws here in our state is that we have the ability to vote absentee, and we have the ability to do so up to several days before the election. This would actually reduce those number of days. It also require that when you send in your absentee ballot, you send in a photocopy of your ID, which I don't know many people who have access to printers. I certainly don't have a printer in my house. It's just an obstacle to voting, and we all have to show an ID when we register to vote, and then we also sign our voter registration card. And in the few instances of voter fraud that we've had in the state of Maine, the clerks in the Secretary of State's office have caught them because of mismatched signatures on the absentee ballot versus what was on file. So we have a system of checks and balances, and this is purely an attempt at weakening our election laws.
So I understand to get an item on the ballot, it's 10% of the votes cast in the last gubernatorial election. Who was it that was behind question one? Who was
Well,
support?
there's this very wealthy dude named Leonard Leo. He's become sort of the mastermind of a lot of these efforts here in Maine on various policy initiatives, and he's been a big contributor and funder of these efforts.
So, thank you, Citizens Initiative, where a single person can create a pact and wreak all kinds of. Okay, but you also have question two, which would create a red flag law. And I know that Maine has had some very tragic mass shooting incidents. Is this an outgrowth of what Maine has experienced in as far as firearm violence?
Yeah, so we had adopted what has become known as yellow flag law before the Lewiston mass shooting, where 18 people lost their lives at the hands of a mentally deranged human being who um, decided, that going on a killing spree is what he wanted to do, and took out took the lives of our neighbors who were innocently enjoying an evening at a bowling alley in a bar. Many of them from the deaf community, playing cornhole at a tournament. Um, and the yellow flag law was not utilized in the case of this mass shooter, and had been very much underutilized prior to the Lewiston shooting. And the yellow flag law has been used a lot more since the shooting. But I think the reason why folks wanted to see the red flag law on the ballot for voters to weigh in is because they feel that the yellow flag law has failed to meet the moment where people are gaining access to high-powered weapons and killing people without any intervention. And the real thrust around this policy is to make sure that if a family member, a friend, someone who knows a person in the same sort of mental state as Mr. Card was when he carried out this mass shooting in Lewiston, they can petition for a court-ordered removal of weapons and be able to make sure that that person does not have access to those weapons during a mental health crisis, and also getting them connected to mental health services, which of course is very much needed. I think we all agree that mental health is a big factor in what's happened not only here in Maine, but of course across the country. The question is, are we going to do something to make sure that people who are in a mental health crisis get access to the resources they need? And in the meantime, make sure they don't have access to weapons that can cause um, tremendous amount of loss, pain, and violence in our communities.
I mean, there comes a point at which, thoughts and prayers, I'm sorry, there needs to be something done to address the root cause. And some of it is easily identified. And why are we not putting our resources there? But you all have been busy on some other fronts. During the last session, you defeated 8 anti-LGBTQ bills. Are there any of those that you would like to highlight, saying this was something that got proposed and I am glad that we were able to defeat it?
Yeah, I mean, these bills, as they've been time and time again, are really distractions from the the issues that families are facing every single day. This has been the playbook replicated time and time again as you take these social issues that drive wedges between working class people, and you use them as an attempt uh, to distract from the fact that uh, your party, in this case Republicans, have done nothing to take action to address the reason why working people are finding it more and more difficult to make ends meet every single month. The fact that housing prices continue to skyrocket, rent continues to go up, food prices continue to soar. You can't afford healthcare. You see healthcare premiums about to increase many times over as a result of the expired tax credit premiums for the health insurance policies on the marketplace. The fact that a lot of people don't even have health insurance and they're swimming in medical debt, student loan debt, the list goes on and on. They're taking out high interest loans, and because they have no other choice in order to pay for significant expense. These issues continue to compound, and yet what we see is these issues being brought forward to try to rip apart our communities and to try to drive a wedge as they have for time immemorial. It wasn't long ago that they were using same-sex marriage as this wedge issue, and public opinion shifted, and they've retreated from that to some extent, although we now see that the potential threat coming to the Supreme Court as a result of uh, Kim Davis rearing her ugliness back into the spotlight. Someone who was a clerk that doesn't want to issue marriage licenses, even though it's in her official duty uh, on behalf as a public servant. It's she doesn't work for a religious organization. She works for she worked for the clerk's office, official government capacity. So anyway, the point being is, we've seen this time and time again, and we're seeing it here in Maine. We're seeing it across the country. There's finding another way, a new way to use LGBTQ people to distract and divide from the bigger issues that people care about. Like I think most families are not concerned about LGBTQ people. They're concerned about, how am I going to pay my mortgage next month? How am I going to afford property taxes? Can I go to the grocery store and not overdraft uh, because the food prices continue to climb, and every trip to the grocery store seems more expensive than the last. That is what I think most families are worried about. Most families are worried about whether or not they will ever achieve the American dream of home ownership. And yet, my Republican colleagues continue to focus on LGBTQ people as sort of the scapegoat for all of our problems.
Yeah,
And I think that's a little unfair.
if I can feed into the misinformation or the lack of accurate information you have on an emotional issue, then you forget how I failed you on the fundamental true survival things that you need. So are you anticipating some additional legislation with the session that will start in January? Or is it fairly quiet for right now?
Well, the interesting thing about the Maine legislature is, in the second session, bills have to be approved by Legislative Council, which is comprised of the leaders from both chambers. And Democrats make up a 6-4 majority on Legislative Council. You need 6 votes for a bill to be introduced in the second session. And so at this point, we didn't approve any anti-LGBTQ bills to be introduced in the second session. So I don't anticipate seeing any in this upcoming session.
Oh, you can breathe a little easier right now.
Yeah, we can
So,
focus on the issues that actually are impacting many people's lives, and dealing with the challenges that people are facing every single day, to just try to get by, and to try to not just be able to uh, make their have their lives be decided by paycheck to paycheck, but rather to be able to get ahead and stay ahead and have some savings. And when the car breaks down, they have money in the bank to make a car repair, and it's not one financial crisis after another. And that's what a lot of Maine families face every single day. And I think I think we have not only a moral obligation, but we have an obligation from an economic perspective. We want people to be economically secure so that they can be productive members of society, and to join our workforce, and to not be chronically absentee because they are constantly dealing with new things in their lives that require them to come out of work. Like, we can do better, and we should be doing better. And that's what I want to focus on in this upcoming legislative session. That's what we should all be focused on, Republicans and Democrats, not only here in Maine, but across the country. And certainly it'd be a nice change of pace if our friends in Washington, D.C. did the same.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to shift just a little bit. Healthcare is a huge issue. And currently, Maine on one side, Vermont on the other. We have New Hampshire, that they have done some incredibly repressive legislation, particularly as it pertains to our transgender youth, access to health care, gender affirming care. There was recently an article in one of the Vermont media about how practitioners are preparing for the influx of youth coming from New Hampshire for services that can no longer be provided. And on our end, it's Dartmouth Medical Center. Is Maine anticipating a similar response?
We've had I actually have a family who moved to my community a few years ago from, I think, the state of Tennessee after they passed legislation that was quite oppressive, and they sought they had the means and the resources, which not all families do,
Right.
to move and to find a place that they felt would be better for their family, and most particularly for their trans child. And they did so, and they've since uh, been living here in the city of Biddeford. And I think that I think kids are just trying to be kids and to try to do what all their other kids are doing, and enjoying uh, the freedom of not having to worry about too much. I think if we all think back about what it was like being a kid, and homework felt like a big worry every single day and a big task. But in hindsight, there's not much to worry about. And my heart goes out to kids, whether they're LGBTQ or there's some other reason why they feel like they don't belong, and that they don't have a safe place to learn and grow, and become an adult in our communities. And so, it's encouraging to me that this family here in Biddeford felt like this was a place where they could raise their kids. And I think every family should be able to find the place that they can call home and feel like they can raise their kids, and that their kids will grow up to be happy, productive members of our community. And that's what we should all be striving for. And it's very disheartening to me that we find ourselves in a time where our partisan uh, polarization has not only been debated and seeping into our households as adults. I think we've all heard of families who aren't talking to each other because they have differences of opinion on politics, which I don't think was normal it's just a few decades ago, but that seems to be more and more common. And now we also have this partisan polarization seeping into our schools, whether it be around LGBTQ students, or it be around uh, literacy and books, and what books kids are reading and so forth. I think it's a really disheartening time that we live in, where not our schools are also being pulled into these political fights, and kids are being put at the center of partisan polarization. And I hope we can get to a place where we move past this, because I think uh, we should all agree that kids should be able to be themselves, be respected, and have the opportunity to grow up and be happy. I think that's what we all want, is for our friends and neighbors and people that we don't even know, just to be happy.
I was going to say, from reading both Boston Spirit and getting the ongoing communications from Equality Maine, there has been a real effort in Maine to ensure that there are books and there's funding to purchase the books, so that they could then go out into school and public libraries, so that when our youth go in, they can read something that is reflective of their lives, and they can see themselves looking back from the literature they're reading. So
Yeah, I think it's important for kids to be able to develop people that they can look up to. When I was growing up in school, which was not that long ago, really, I didn't know of any LGBTQ people, particularly people who were in public service, or who had been pioneers and uh, you know working towards the civil rights of people like me. And it wasn't until I was actually working on the marriage equality campaign here in Maine back in 2011 that I first heard the name Harvey Milk and learned about someone who many decades before had been fighting for equal representation and equal rights for LGBTQ people. And that was it was kind of transformational for me in the sense that I then had someone that I could relate to who had taken on this extraordinary fight of saying that, hey, we're here and we deserve the same rights that everyone else has, the same dignity, the same respect. And I think, more kids growing up today, I hope um, I hope they all have someone that they can look up to, regardless of who they are. But, whether it's a baseball player, a football player, a soccer star, an actress, an actor, or a public servant, all kids deserve someone that they can point to and say, that's someone that I look up to.
As they can now, looking at Maine Speaker of the House and say, I can do that. So you were reelected after having taken time off because of term limits, but this means you've got some time to be in the legislature so that we might continue to appreciate having an openly out Speaker of the House in Maine for maybe a couple more years.
Yeah, we'll certainly see. Focused on making sure that we deliver results that voters appreciate, and that they see that the work that we're doing in the Maine legislature is making an improvement in the lives of them and their neighbors, and that we're making investments in our communities. We're not just taking a look at the issues and saying, well, those issues are too big for us to grapple. We're just not going to be able to solve them. And, I think that's the difficult thing about the world we live in today. It's a lot of it's instant gratification, in part because of the technology we have at our fingertips. We expect instant results like a Google search, and solving the housing crisis is not as simple as a Google search. It's going to require a lot of work, but we've done some really important work over the last 6 years on that issue. $315 million investment in new affordable housing. We finally eclipsed 1,000 units per year, which is what we needed for many decades, but we failed to do. We were building about 250 units a year. And I want to continue to work on these issues. And so, I think we've done a lot of good work. We have a lot more work to do, and we'll see if I'm a part of it or not. But I definitely expect to continue to ask my community to for their support in allowing me to continue to do this work, which I am extremely grateful for, and I don't take it for granted, because I know I know from experience that it might not last forever, especially since term limits are a real thing. And we I met my term limit once, and so I know that it's possible to not be a member of the legislature. I had 2 years of downtime, and know that feeling all too well.
Okay, and so during that downtime, you got to spend more time with Pancake. And I understand that as I get ready to say goodbye, I understand that Pancake may have a companion now.
Yeah. So my husband he had a Aussie Doodle before we met, so it's perfect match made in heaven, because not only are we super compatible, but also our dogs have come to really love each other as well. So we have an Aussie Doodle named Jax, and probably more appropriately Flapjacks, and of course I have the Golden Doodle Pancake. So they're a good team.
I was gonna say, congratulations on becoming a step parent,
Yeah.
and also for getting married, because I don't think you were the last time we talked. So congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I hope your session goes well, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you for joining us. And until next time, remember, resist.